Hey guys, welcome to the latest episode of the 4040 Vision podcast, the ultimate sports history pod where hindsight is 40/40. Before we get started, let's pay some bills and hear from our presenting sponsors. What's up, y'all? Welcome to 4040 Shorts from the 4040 Vision podcast. This is our short form format where we cover a sports topic in about 10 to 15 minutes. I'm your host, Khaled Abdallah, and today's topic are the parallels between Michael Vick and Allen Iverson. This podcast was inspired by the podcast we did a few weeks ago about Michael Vick. We did a retrospective of his career. We talked about his place in NFL history. We talked about his place in pop culture history. And for some reason, it got me thinking about Allen Iverson. On that podcast, I talked about how Michael Vick was the Allen Iverson of the NFL. And the more I thought about it, honestly, the more fitting that it was. So I think just from a cultural perspective, from a sporting perspective, from a life story perspective, there's a lot of similarities, which was kind of weird, to be honest. They both grew up in Virginia. They both came from rough backgrounds in Virginia. They both decided, in spite of having plenty of other offers, to play college sports in the Virginia, D.C. area, Nova area. Allen Iverson, of course, went to Georgetown. Michael Vick went to Virginia Tech. And after stellar college careers, they were both number one picks. Allen Iverson went number one overall to the Philadelphia 76ers, and Michael Vick went first overall to the Atlanta Falcons, where he became the first black quarterback taken number one overall. So he broke that glass ceiling, and there's been numerous ones after that. Jameis Winston, Jamarcus Russell, unfortunately, Cam Newton, Kyler Murray. I'm sure I'm forgetting some other guys, but this was the first time that Michael Vick, at least, broke the mold in terms of who he became and the career that he was going to have. And I think what really set these guys apart and what drew the parallels for me, at least, was the approach that they had to the game and the way that they revolutionized the game. So they were both incredible dual threats. So you think about Allen Iverson, he was known for being one of the fastest guys in the NBA. He had an incredible, almost unguardable first step, despite being one of the smaller guys in the NBA. And he played the game with a level of fearlessness and recklessness that I think ultimately had an impact on his career and shortened the length of his career, but that was just Allen Iverson doing what he does. You think about Michael Vick, obviously one of the best athletes to ever play quarterback, one of the best athletes to ever play in the NFL. I think we can say that. And he also played the game with a level of recklessness and fearlessness that definitely had an impact on his career. And unfortunately, that same recklessness was off the field. Again, same thing as Allen Iverson. And they were both dual threat players. They were both guys that made you fear them because of not just their skill, but their speed and athleticism and agility and all that. And they both played the game and lived their life with a certain level of style and swagger. They both had a very unique sense of style that I think helped make hip-hop culture and African-American culture a little bit more mainstream. Iverson had the cornrows, the tattoos, and his baggy clothes. That was his fashion statement, and his fashion was almost the reason, or at least a big reason, why David Stern started enacting the dress code for the NBA as a reaction to fans not liking the quote-unquote street style that Allen Iverson brought to the NBA. You think about Michael Vick. He was very similar. He also had the cornrows, the tattoos. He had the big clothes. I mean, I know baggy clothes were just a fashion statement in the late 90s, early 2000s, but he did a lot of that. The same thing. And if you think about quarterbacks before Michael Vick, it was a lot of very buttoned up, reserved guys, a lot of tall, clean cut, clean shaven white guys. And then all of a sudden you have this, 6 foot, 6'1" black dude with cornrows and tattoos and a beard, and he was just not the archetype of what a quarterback had looked like for the first 40, 50 years of the NFL. And I think that same style and swagger while it made him very cool, I think it made a lot of people in the football establishment very nervous. And the other thing I think it makes them, because of that style and swagger, I think they both became incredible cultural icons, right? People talk about Allen Iverson as an all-time great player, but he was also an all-time great, I don't know, influencer, if that's the word you want to use, an all-time great icon, because he brought, again, that same swagger and style that he played with. He brought to, off the court. And kids everywhere wanted to dress like Allen Iverson, and he had a signature shoe, and everybody wanted to wear Reeboks. He made Reeboks cool for a while with his Answer shoes. And speaking of shoes, I don't know if any other NFL player, please correct me if I'm wrong, I don't think any other NFL player in the history of the league has ever had a signature shoe like Michael Vick. Obviously, it was a signature cleat, but back then they still played on that, not even the field turf, but the AstroTurf. So a lot of games in the NFL were played essentially in basketball shoes. I think Bo Jackson had a shoe. Maybe the Air Veers were Bo Jackson's, but I don't know if it was a direct one-to-one connection. I could be wrong. But Michael Vick had a signature shoe. And I remember back in high school, when I was in high school in the early 2000s, everybody wanted that shoe. It was expensive, but it was nice. It was real nice. And people, just like they wanted Jordans, just like they wanted the Kobe's, they wanted the Michael Vick cleats and the Michael Vick shoes, because obviously you could wear them when you're playing football on turf or when you're out and about. And I talked about this with Josh Marcella on the Michael Vick pod, was that Michael Vick really made being a quarterback cool, like really, really cool. And obviously before that, everybody wanted to be the quarterback. When you're playing in the backyard with your friends, you wanted to play quarterback. Even when you're just messing around by yourself as a kid, you're dreaming up that 2-minute drill. You're throwing a touchdown as the clock expires. But I don't know if quarterback was necessarily cool. It was something you wanted to do, but there was like a responsibility, a leadership that was associated with it. But when you pretended to be Michael Vick, you're running around, you're pretending to scramble and dodge 300-pound defensive linemen and outrun cornerbacks and do all that stuff. And you wanted his jersey. I'm literally wearing his jersey right now. I bought this, I think, my sophomore year of high school. And I also told a story on the original podcast that me and my brother got into a fist fight in our driveway because we fought over who would wear this jersey first. And I don't think anybody's doing that back then with a Peyton Manning jersey or, I don't know, the John Elway jersey, Brett Favre. But people were fighting, and I'm proof, over a Michael Vick jersey. And I think the other thing, maybe the more unfortunate thing that ties them is the controversy that surrounded them. Obviously, Michael Vick's is infinitely worse in terms of the controversy than Allen Iverson's. I think Allen Iverson's big story was in high school, he got into a fight that became racially charged, I guess we could use the word, in terms of the prosecution and all that, and they tried to throw the book at him, and he almost went to prison and wasn't able to play college ball, but it was a whole thing basically. And that controversy followed him to a certain degree through his career. He was known for partying really hard, wasn't known for his practice habits. We all obviously have the infamous practice rant, which I believe he missed practice because of the funeral of a friend. So it's been mischaracterized, I think, a little bit. But he was always a controversial figure because he played hard. He played harder than he practiced. When I mean play, I mean, play in the casinos or in the clubs or whatever it is. But he gave 100% every time he was on the floor during a game. But again, his work ethic and all that stuff was called into question. And, his career was definitely shorter probably than it should have been if he had taken care of himself. With Michael Vick, I don't even know if controversy is the right word, because the man went to prison for 14, 18 months, whatever it is, for the dogfighting and all that stuff. So it goes beyond a controversy. But I guess after his prison sentence, he became a controversial figure because teams brought him back. He played for the Eagles, did really well, played for the Jets and the Steelers, didn't play all that well. But he became controversial because people talked about, he shouldn't be in the league at all, he shouldn't be playing, whatever it is. But there was always a media firestorm around both of these guys. And I think, despite the differences in the sports that they played, despite the differences in their personalities, I think Michael Vick was a little more reserved in terms of his personality. Allen Iverson was a bit more gregarious, I guess you could say, but they both had this effortless sense of cool, this effortless sense of swagger. And I think the other parallel is that deep down, I think both of their fan bases knew that this guy wasn't the one that's going to win us a championship. He's going to be fun to root for. But because of the limitations that came with their style, with Allen Iverson being so ball dominant, but also being the smallest guy on the floor, with Michael Vick not being the most accurate guy, despite being the most athletic, we knew that there was a ceiling to their success, and they both experienced that ceiling. I want to say Michael Vick made to an NFC Championship game. Allen Iverson obviously made the finals against the Lakers in 2001. So they both reached their ceilings. They definitely didn't reach their potential for different reasons, and I think that is another parallel that's a little less fun to talk about than the swagger and the cool factor and all that stuff. But I think ultimately their legacy, Allen Iverson was inducted into the Basketball Hall of Fame. I think that's a no-brainer. He's one of the best point guards of all time, one of the most fun players to root for of all time. Josh and I talked about Michael Vick. I don't think he's going to be a Hall of Famer just because he didn't play long enough because of the prison sentence and everything else. And I think there's enough controversy surrounding him, but he's still an all-time great player that really changed how we look at quarterbacks and the skill sets that we look for in our quarterbacks. So they both have an incredible lasting legacy in their respective sports, an incredible lasting legacy in pop culture, in American culture, in sports culture, in black culture, all those things. And it was really a privilege for me growing up to be able to watch these guys play. And if you're too young to remember Michael Vick turn it up in Lambeau Field when he was really young, or Allen Iverson winning Game 1 against the Lakers that looked like an absolute juggernaut, then I suggest you go look up some of those highlights. Go watch ESPN Classic or NFL Films or whatever it is. All the stuff's on YouTube, so check it out. And you'll see why folks like me, maybe 35 and over, are so obsessed with Michael Vick and Allen Iverson and the impact that they had on their respective sports. Let me know if I'm completely off base. Let me know if I'm completely on track. We'd like to hear from you guys. You can leave us a voice note on Spotify. You can leave us a comment wherever you're listening to this podcast. Make sure to subscribe and leave us a review wherever you're listening to this podcast. And make sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel. Make sure to follow us on all the major social media platforms. Thanks, y'all. Peace out.